on Tech Talk, and we're doing things a little differently today. If you notice, the picture looks a little different. We're recording this in a high frame rate, and this is being recorded on a Sony 4K camera. It's our new little camera that we've got here in the studio. So this is the ultimate of video cameras that Sony is offering. It can record in 4K. We're not going to use 4K resolution. There's not much point in it, but I want to try something in the high frame rate. So we're recording this in full 60 frame progressive scan 1080p. What we've got on our bench today, this is a Luxman lv103. This is an old beast. It's got tubes in it. I've had this unit for probably about 30 years. It was ridiculously expensive when I bought it. 60 watts per channel. Uses solid state output. It's MOSFET output transistors, 60 watt per channel, but the vacuum tubes here are your preamp, your buffering. We've seen a real comeback in hybrid amplifiers over the last couple years. Samsung has been pushing out a bunch of sound bars and so forth, and they put their little tubes on the front. This is something that Luxman was doing 30 years ago. Except for Luxman did it properly. Because when Luxman did it, they weren't coupling it to a digital amplifier. They were coupling it to a good old class AB linear amplifier. Let the vacuum tubes do their job of the low-level amplification, and let the output transistors or the output MOSFETs do their job as the power outputs. I apologize for all the noise in the background. I do have the heat on in here. It's about -5 right now outside, and I'm working in the garage. So what we've got on this, if we look inside here, we've actually got two power supplies in here. The vacuum tubes require a high voltage supply, and they also require a low voltage supply to heat up the filaments. So we have a little transformer here, and I believe this one here is just, well, it's just the filament supply, or whether it's the filament supply and the high voltage supply. I haven't really gone through here. Never had this unit open. I've had this unit for 30 years, but never had to have it open. What's gone wrong with it is the input-output switches, the selector switches are all bad. As far as I know, the unit works other than the fact that the switches are bad. And I've decided it's time to give this thing an overhaul. This unit has very, very warm sound, and I really like the sound of this old Luxman. As you can see, there's not a lot to it. It's very, very simple. You get your output, you get your MOSFET outputs, which are K405 and J115, your N-type and P-type MOSFET transistors. Couple little, I believe these ones was a temperature compensator here to measure the temperature of the heat sink, and a couple little, I think these are driver or maybe temperature compensating transistors. Got a couple little driver transistors down here, some more driver circuits, both the left and the right channel. It looks like there's some of that ugly glue that goes conductive that will scrape out of there before we apply power to this thing. And then there's the tube circuit. These green wires come off of the tube board. These tubes in here are original. They've never been changed. And again, they're not being used as power tubes. So therefore, they're not apt to fail like you would, say, EL34s or KT88s or any of the other output tubes that are driving a lot of power. These things are strictly in the preamp stage. And they're there for one reason and one reason only: to induce harmonic distortion. Yes, I said it. They are there to create harmonic distortion. The thing that tube amp buffs enjoy is harmonic distortion. That's why guitarists love their tube amps. Gives you that warm sound. And it's the type of harmonic distortion that vacuum tubes produce that is pleasing. See, when a transistor distorts, it creates odd order harmonics. And the odd order harmonics sound very harsh and distorted. And it's not very musical. The ear picks up even the slightest amount of odd order harmonics. Even order harmonics, though, are all in phase and they're all in step musically with your sound. So that's where you get your overtones, and that's what makes a guitar amplifier have that full sound, that bold full sound, especially in the distortion range, is the even order harmonics. And that's why today you still see tube amplifiers. You see high-end tube amplifiers. The amplifier I use in my studio, for example, I don't know if you've seen it in some of my other videos, you may have seen it in the background, but it's a full tube amplifier, all vacuum tubes, and that's what I'm using now, is a full tube amp. This used to be my amp in my studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bottom off this thing as well, and we're going to try and get in here and get some cleaner into all these switches, and then we'll check it out. But I don't believe there's really anything else wrong with this yet. I could be wrong. It's been many years since I've used this. I've had my my all tube amp I've had for about, I guess, 4 or so years, so I haven't really run this thing in a while. But the last time I ran it, it was the switches. I had to take it out of service because these switches were just getting so noisy. Nice thing about these switches is if you look on the back here, you can see that there's a little hole that will be good for getting some. Oh, maybe it might help if I put this thing in autofocus. I guess I'm too close to zoom in. Interesting. Can't zoom in quite as close on this camera as the other one. It has to be further away. It's interesting to note. One thing about this camera that I'm using, it's a very high quality lens, and it's a very large sensor, so it gives you a very shallow depth of field in the focus, whereas my other little cheapy camera, well, everything's in focus on it always. So the first thing I'm going to do on this is I'm just going to get my good old contact cleaner. We're going to spray it into the switches here and see if we can get these switches to not be so noisy and not cut in and out. So we'll just get our contact cleaner, just give each switch a little shot. and then just work the switches, work the cleaner into the switches. Woo! As you can see, when they say it's flammable, they're not kidding. It's flammable. So don't be smoking. Don't have any sparks or open flames around when you're using that stuff, or you could end up with a bit of a problem. Makes a great flamethrower though, right? I kid you not, this stuff's got diesel in it. They may not list that on the ingredient list, but it stinks like diesel. And I say, if it smells like diesel and it burns like diesel, therefore it must contain diesel. We'll do the same for the, these are the record out switches. So we'll just spray down these switches as well. Just give them a clean once over here. And then I will hook this thing up to my speakers and see how it sounds. We'll do the volume control while I'm at it because it's accessible on here. Volume control is over here. One nice thing about Luxman is at least they made their units easy to get at. So as far as cleaning stuff like getting controls clean, well, there's the volume control there. So it's no big deal to get in here with the cleaner and just spray the back of the switch. Give it a good rotation here, and I'll do the same for the other controls. The balance and the bass and treble, they need to be cleaned on this thing too. They're not quite as easy to get at as the volume control, but still shouldn't be an issue. One of them's here, there's another one up here, and there's one just a little bit further down, but we can get at it, no problem. Let's get in here with the cleaner, get into the, I can get into the back of that control. Put my light in there so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I can get into the back of that control. It's got a little hole in the back, so we can get the cleaner into the switch itself, into the control. The bass control is going to be a little bit more difficult. It's down inside here. I think I can get into it though. Do the bass control. We'll do the balance control, which is up top here. One nice thing about these old units is that they all had a phono preamp in it, because back in the day, everybody had vinyl. That's something that you don't find anymore. The amplifiers these days don't have a preamp on them. Well, this one did, and not only did it have a preamp, it also had one that would do a moving coil or a moving magnet, and that switch is right back here. So we'll do that one at the same time. It's actually switched through this long cable, which has a metal band in it that when you push it back and forth, it slides a metal band back and forth inside here to actually activate the slide switch that's underneath this cover. The reason it's shielded is for to shield it from hum. I think my switches are probably pretty clean now, so we're going to hook this thing up and we're going to see how it sounds. Here's something interesting I noticed on this as I was connecting up my speakers. This unit was never UL approved or CSA approved. It's got a Ontario hydro electrical approval by special inspection. When these units were imported into Canada from Japan, from Luxman, they never were tested by Underwriters Laboratory or Canadian Standards Association. Instead, the importer had the units inspected by Ontario Hydro before they could sell them in the country. They weren't a real popular unit. They were sold through boutique dealers, and they were bloody expensive. I think this amplifier here, if I remember, this is going back to like 1980, I think 83 or 84 when I bought it. Dollar-wise on this thing, this little 60-watt amplifier cost me more than this 4K camera that I'm shooting this video with. And if you look up the 4K camera that Sony have, you'll know how much this camera cost. And this amplifier cost more in 1984 dollars than this camera did today. So they were very pricey amplifiers. It was well over $2,000 for this amplifier. I think it was like $2,300 or $2,400. I must have needed my head examined for buying such a ridiculously expensive piece of equipment, but it did have good sound. So we're just going to hook up the power, hook up a source for music, and test this thing out. So here we've got the good old mini disc machine hooked up. I've got my mini disc of royalty-free music, and we'll just turn on the amplifier. I'm first going to turn on the preheat switch and let the tubes warm up for a minute or two before turning on the power. It's always a good idea when you're dealing with vacuum tubes that you heat up the filaments a bit. So we'll leave this thing going for a few minutes here before I turn on the power. Okay, we're going to turn on the power now, and I'm going to select the CD input. And I'll have the volume and everything, I'll have the tone and everything turned to 0. And we'll just start playing a disc here and see what happens when I turn on the volume. Oh, might help if I turn on the speakers. Yep. Sounds great. Try the next track. Again, I got to be careful because even though this music that I'm playing is royalty-free music downloaded from the Music Bakery, some assholes out there in the world make claims, namely the Francia Jazzline Orchestra, whoever the hell they are, they don't even exist. Just somebody who's fraudulently gone and stolen music from the Music Bakery. Probably used the same program I used to create this, which was Smart Sounds, when I purchased the tracks with my editing program. They've gone ahead and released this music on a CD, and YouTube picks it up as copyright music, and then I have to dispute every single video that I use it on. And for about 60 days, any money that I would make off my videos, I don't make, because I have to dispute every track, every time, and it takes a month to 2 months to get it cleared up. And yeah, it just pisses me off. So I don't want to leave this thing playing for more than a few seconds because on this amplifier here, there's a couple little LEDs. tell me that everything's okay. There's one on each channel. Actually, there's two on each channel. There's a little one over here. There's another one over here. These are to tell you that the voltages are correct. And if they don't light up when you fire it up, if they don't light up, it won't come out of protection. And that's just to give you a hint where to look. It's basically in the tube circuit, and tube bias circuit. If you have a tube that has, say, a filament short cathode or a grid short, and you have a voltage that's not supposed to be there, then it won't allow the outputs to kick in. It's just protection. But sound quality is excellent off this. These are little PSB mites that I'm running here, and it just, the sound is fantastic. And now I can put the tone controls on. Like I was playing that flat. I mean, these are small little bookshelf speakers that I'm using, little PSB mites, and yeah, the sound quality off these things, this amp can really drive them good. Switches out. Balance. I think it's pretty safe to say this unit is good. Wonder how the stereo sounded when I point that. That's the speakers, they're just sitting side by side. I just wonder how the stereo sound is picked up by the camera. One thing I did notice is that when I turn the camera, this has got level meters on it. When I turn the camera away from the speakers, the sound went to the right. And when I'm speaking, I'm coming more to the left. So it's just got a 1-point microphone on top of the camera, but it is a 5-channel sound system. The camera is now set for stereo, as in this particular mode, it only records stereo. In AVC HD, it can do 5.1 channel. I haven't played around with that yet. I'm kind of playing around with this thing in 60 frames. So anyway, there is my Luxman back together. And a good old tone. That's my tone source I use when I recorded my calibration tape for for cassette. I just have it on the good old mini disc. Dead on. Not that you'd expect it to be off because it's digital, but that's what I use when I make calibration tapes. I use a tone off of this. Just I got a tone recorded on one of the tracks, and I'll record a blank tape on my calibrated Techniques tape deck, which I have certified the calibration on it. Then I use those test tapes like regular cassette tape like this, right? I don't want to put my I've got a set of calibration tapes which were very expensive. I paid about $200 for one tape. It's got sweep and it's got tones on it, and that's about it. Back in my service center days, and it was all these tapes you get like a VHS or a beta alignment tape, like $250 for a stupid tape with test patterns on it. So I took my original tape and I calibrated made sure my quartz lock tape deck is never off. But I verified that it was correct, and then I use that to record a tone on just a regular cheap tape. That way, if I'm working on a tape deck and then tape gets chewed up, I've chewed up a $1.49 tape, not a $150 calibration tape. Anyway, I use the digital source off here. As you can see, I use a guitar tuner when I'm testing speed. I just use a guitar tuner to verify I'm on speed. Anyway, there's my Luxman going to go back together. Not back together yet, but it's going to go back together. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.